One must learn to see and hear. I theorized that I automatically analyze variances in speech from individuals, pauses, breaths, phonetics, and such, specifically because I was left alone with a paranoid schizophrenic from birth. Before I learned to see, I had already realized that my survival depended upon reacting in a manner calmingly compatible to my caregiver. My actual survival was dependent upon recognizing my caregiver's changes in personality and degrees of rationality. Up until a few months after my 15th birthday, when I had earned enough cash to attend an independent driving class and purchase a non-functioning automobile for my parents, paying the mechanic shop conveniently located at the entrance to our neighborhood to rebuild the transmission and perform bodywork including paint, I was at varying times in a position where hypervigilance was necessary. Depending on exactly what combination of experimental psychiatrist-prescribed drugs she was ingesting, and the amount of the changing effects they had on her body's chemistry, my mother's tendency towards self-delusional derived violence varied from day to day. Nights spent laying awake with a pilfered serrated kitchen knife in my hand under the pillows, or behind the thin cardboard-like sliding doors of my closet were common. Schizophrenia is much like narcissism with the addition of voices or thoughts in one's head that don't seem to emanate from one's own brain. A narcissist, like the aforementioned Tommy Tiny Coward Penis, can actually only interpret all sensory data incoming as pertaining to themselves, exclusively. In my experience, which extends to many more interactions with individuals than my own maternal unit, schizophrenics have a varying degree both in the ability to recognize that all thoughts presenting in their internal dialogue are indeed from their own mind, and the frequency of occurrence of these obtrusive observations. Over the decades, I've witnessed many who are suddenly quite rational and cooperative when, for instance, the cops show up on the scene. My mother was like this, at least until her brain tumor had grown much larger in her later years. At that point, in the Shiner nursing home, where she died after some years, she had the habit of calling the local police and reporting that her roommate was plotting to kill her. That is an allegation that every time must be investigated. Events of this nature do occur embarrassingly frequently in human societies, and that would be the proper role of the police. But as a child, being trapped with nowhere else to go and no way to get anywhere if I did, self-defense was solely my responsibility. I never went to kindergarten. It wasn't mandatory at the time, and I wanted to continue staying up all night and watching horror movies. Around this time, she would routinely inform me, through nonstop bursts of mentholated cigarette smoke, thoughts such as, our neighbors are sitting underneath our windows and writing down everything we say. Last night, the television channel was interrupted by a live feed of a man in a black suit and tie, who was sitting at a table and staring directly at me, who asked, "Do you really want to kill your husband?" And a multitude of reasons why my father had no intention of having sex with her. Counselors at school, social workers, father, other chaplains at paternal units work on the Air Force Base, psychologists, both for me and the ones whose responsibility it was to watch the kid while its mom was in with the psychiatrist, teachers. I told all of these and a few more exactly, in great detail surprising for a child, what my daily home life was and how it could be improved. Plenty of ideas and open for suggestions. Somehow the problem was me. Not mine, but me. At 12, I was funneled to a gray-haired man in a big leather chair in front of a bookcase loaded with books collecting dust. He was a drug dealer, employed by a pharmaceutical manufacturer that paid for most or all of his expensive years in college. Or, at least that's an 80% likely scenario. Maybe someone else paid for his education, but I doubt it. He had too many free samples of a Skittles rainbow of pills in printed cardboard and foiled blister packs. The kind of things that come with matching coffee mugs and ballpoint pens. For the next 3 years, until I moved out at 15, I was experimented on, testing out dosages of imipramine, Paxil, Prozac, and at least 2 others. This included a 1-month stay at a private mental hospital named Charter Real. I was illegally referred to this facility by a social worker billing the county or state for his services after the fact at Bluebonnet Trails in Seguin, surely for a commission. This was common then and might still be. My official cause? Sleep disorder. Charter Real is no longer there, having been bulldozed and reformed as something else commercially zoned. Every day we, us problem children, played volleyball or something similar in an indoor carpeted gymnasium with speakers mounted to the walls. Sat in a circle and practiced popping our knuckles one by one down the line, punctuating the silences. There was an art room with a kiln and paints. Bunked 2 to a room ages 12 to 17. Entertainment once daily was our group choice of whatever VHS movie we wanted from a selection filling a decent-sized closet. Every single day, no matter who had left or arrived, we as a majority chose the same movie, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Python time came with snacks, always the highlight of the routine. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Besides 2 hour-long group silences a day, twice a week for half an hour, a drug dealer that worked for a pharmaceutical manufacturer would talk to us individually in a closet while scribbling on a pad of paper with the drug manufacturer's name and logo on it. The pens and coffee mugs had the proprietary names of individual products on them. They were usually named the same way aliens in 1950s sci-fi flicks were. All of them tasted bitter. For 3 years, my body had random eccentricities, like shaking hands. This was in addition to constant erections, of course. Prozac in particular made me want to move and stay in motion, which is perfect behavior for someone who has never had sex but half the time can't urinate because his penis is hard, hates everything including himself, and is top 30 test scoring in his class and school, but apparently speaks a different language than the common local one, since being understood rarely occurred. Apathy was the most horrible of the effects. A constant stare reflex. Inability to concentrate, even read. Taking away all emotions means that you can never feel bad, so we're going to call that a success. Never once did anyone suggest they try my idea, getting me the fuck away from the dangerous, crazy 300-pound screaming and crying woman and her unpleasant and flighty husband. Your parents are awful at their job? Here, have some experimental bitterness, and maybe you won't care anymore. Television screens are items flashing I move past randomly. Now it's commonplace to see commercials advertising prescription drugs, complete with animated mascots. I would have loved to be paid for creating the talking box human feces, and catchy jingles, like long molecule chains that are nearly still intact when they get flushed out, are fashion accessories. And it's now out of fashion to have problems and then solve them.